Ever heard that old saying, money doesn't grow on trees?
Oh, yeah. Classic, right?
It is a classic. But you know what? If we could kind of like reframe that whole idea, like unlock a totally different perspective on prosperity.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today with Martha Guidici. She's a prosperity teacher with a fascinating take on this whole concept.
All right, let's hear it. What's Gidici's angle?
Well, she kicks things off with this character she calls Whimpering Willie.
Whimpering Willie. Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. He's like the poster child for a scarcity mindset, totally convinced he's destined to struggle financially.
Oh, I know a Willie.
Right. So someone suggests, the obvious, hey, why not just work for money? And Willie, he's got an excuse ready to go. Let me guess. He's tried that. It didn't work. Oh, it's way more than that. He's adamant about trying every other option first.
Yeah.
Asking, begging, even crying.
Crying. Wow, okay. He really embodies that scarcity mindset, huh?
He's a whole mood.
Yeah.
But you know what? He actually highlights a really important point. It's not enough to just go through the motions. We got to address the mindset underneath it all.
He's trapped in that cycle of lack, believing that money is always just out of reach.
Exactly. So where do trees come into all of this? Well, Giudice uses them to represent something you might not expect. Creativity.
Interesting. So she's not saying that dollar bills are going to sprout from branches or anything.
No, not quite. But she argues that trees, in their very essence, embody that spirit of creation and that creative power. It all stems from our imagination.
We started to see where she's going with this.
Because her big idea is that your imagination, it's not just daydreaming, it's literally shaping the world around you.
Whoa. Okay. That's a pretty bold statement.
Right. She even goes so far as to call imagination the scissors of the mind.
Scissors of the mind. That's a powerful image.
It really is. And you know what else? She believes that imagination shapes the very fabric of the universe.
We're talking about manifestation here, like our thoughts creating our reality.
Exactly. She actually argues that mankind's collective imagination has brought forth everything we see around us.
Everything.
Think about it. Every invention, every building, every piece of art, it all began as a thought, a spark of imagination.
Okay, I see what you mean. It's like that famous quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Exactly. But there's a catch, of course.
Uh-oh. There's always a catch.
Right. If we don't consciously direct that imagination, it can end up manifesting things we don't want simply by default.
It's like having a superpower but not knowing how to control it.
That's a great way to put it. It's like having this incredibly powerful tool at our disposal but not using it properly.
So how do we harness that power? How do we become conscious creators instead of accidental manifestors?
Well, that's a great question. And it's something we're going to unpack in much more detail as we dive deeper into Giudici's work. But before we do, let's address another crucial point.
Okay, what's that?
If our imagination is so powerful, why do so many of us still struggle with feelings of lack or limitation? Why do we get stuck in those negative thought patterns?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If we're capable of imagining anything, why do we so often default to what we don't want? Well, Giudici, she gets into some of the common barriers to creative thinking. We often kind of get in our own way without even realizing it.
We're our own worst enemies sometimes, huh?
It's so true. And remember that Kansas City Star article you found for this deep dive?
Yeah, what about it?
Well, it talked about those obstacles to creative problem solving, like not having all the information, misunderstanding the problem, that kind of thing.
Oh, right. Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like trying to assemble furniture without the instructions,
Exactly.
Yeah.
You might eventually figure it out, but it's going to be a frustrating process.
And you're probably going to end up with some extra screws.
Right. Exactly. And Giudici, she takes it a step further. She suggests that we often sabotage our own prosperity, with negative self-images and those limiting beliefs.
Oh, tell me about it. Those inner voices can be brutal.
Right, like I'm not good enough, or I'll never be able to afford that.
Oh, yeah, those are the worst.
Giudici would say, those thoughts, they carry weight. They become the images our imaginations latch onto. And then they start shaping our realities.
So it's not enough to just have this vague desire for a better life. We actually have to create a clear, detailed vision in our minds.
Exactly. Giudici calls this picturing power.
Picturing power. I like that. So we have to visualize what we want, almost like we already have it.
Exactly. And she illustrates this with a really interesting story about Catherine Ponder. She's another prosperity teacher. And Ponder, she wanted a new car.
Who doesn't love a new car?
Right. But her desire was pretty general, just a new car. But her son, he had a very specific car in mind. He wanted something sporty, high performance, all the bells and whistles.
Okay, I'm seeing where this is going. So what happened? Did two new cars just magically appear in their driveway?
Two sporty cars,
Yeah.
just like her son envisioned.
No way.
Yep. And ponder, she ended up with this car she didn't even really want because her visualization wasn't specific enough.
Wow, that's both hilarious and a little unnerving.
Yeah.
It really drives home the point about focused intention. So how do we harness this picturing power in a practical way? How do we make it work for us?
Well, that's where Giudice introduces this concept of treasure mapping.
Okay, treasure maps. Now, before anyone starts digging up their backyard, what are we talking about here?
It's not about buried gold or anything like that. It's more about creating a visual representation of your desires, a way to bring your picturing power to life.
So like a vision board, but with a focus on prosperity.
Exactly. Giudice, she calls it a pictured prayer.
Pictured prayer.
Yeah, so instead of just, thinking about what we want, we're already creating this tangible visual representation of it.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So by engaging with this visual reminder daily, we're essentially impressing these desires onto our subconscious minds.
Exactly. And in doing so, we're aligning ourselves with their manifestation.
Yeah.
We're putting it out there, so to speak.
I can imagine some people might hear this and think, wait a minute, are we talking about manipulating God or the universe here, like trying to force things to go our way?
Oh, absolutely. It's an understandable concern. But Giudice's very clear that it's not about control. It's not about forcing anything. It's more about aligning ourselves with the flow of abundance that already exists.
So less about rerouting a river, more about getting in sync with its natural current.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our own inherent connection to that abundance and then using our imagination to consciously shape how it shows up in our lives.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. What about that feeling of deserving prosperity, though? Some people might think, who am I to ask for so much? Like they're not worthy of receiving abundance.
Right. That's a common block for
Yeah.
sure. But Giudice, she addresses that too. She connects it to the I am principle.
The I am principle.
Yeah, it's this understanding that we're inherently one with the divine source. And because of that connection, we have access to its limitless nature.
So it's not about earning our worthiness, but rather recognizing that it's already within us.
Exactly. And she ties this to the concept of Christ consciousness too. The idea of this abundant, loving presence that's available to everyone. It's our birthright, she says, to tap into that abundance and experience prosperity in all areas of our lives.
Okay, I love that perspective. So how does one actually go about creating a treasure map? Do I need a pirate hat and a talking parrot?
I'm afraid those are optional.
Darn.
Giudice provides some very practical steps. You can start with a large board or even just a simple notebook. Anything that gives you a blank canvas for your dreams, really.
Got it. Our blank canvas. What's next? We got to fill it up with something.
Right. And this is the fun part. Gather colorful, specific images and words that resonate with your desires. Pictures from magazines, inspiring quotes. You can even do your own drawings, whatever feels good. Choose visuals that evoke a strong, positive feeling within you.
This is really starting to sound less like a treasure map and more like a powerful manifestation tool.
That's exactly what it is. And Giudice suggests dividing the treasure map into different life areas too.
Okay.
Finances, health, relationships, career, that sort of thing, to create this visual blueprint for your ideal life.
So instead of scattering our energy, we're creating this focused vision for each area, like compartments on a ship. It's like we're curating our own little museum of what if. And by revisiting this map every day, we're basically walking through that museum, immersing ourselves in that energy.
Exactly. And Giudice, she's really big on the consistency part. It's about weaving this into your routine,
Yeah.
like meditation or journaling. Keep those desires front and center.
Gotta keep the dream alive. Speaking of which, Giudice mentions some really cool tips for making this practice even more potent, like using what she calls definite words, stepping into those desires with confidence.
Owning it, right. No more wishy-washy. I'd like a little extra income. Be bold. I am attracting a monthly income of $10,000. See the difference.
Wow, yeah, it's like we're sending a much clearer signal to the universe, no more mixed messages. But what about when life throws those curveballs, And what we thought we wanted kind of shifts. Can we tweak the treasure map as we go?
Oh, absolutely. Think of it as a living document, reflecting those beautiful, evolving desires. If something's not resonating anymore or a new dream pops up, update it. Keep it aligned with you.
Gotta stay true to ourselves. So it's less about clinging to this rigid vision, more about flowing with those changes.
Exactly. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Some folks might feel weird about having all their deepest desires,
Yes.
plastered up for everyone to see.
Right. Like, here are my heart's desires, world. Don't mind me.
Giudice gets that. She says, if you're surrounded by negativity, skepticism, whatever, it's totally cool to keep your treasure map private. Tuck it away in a safe space.
Your own little dream sanctuary.
Exactly. And speaking of support, Giudice recommends incorporating what she calls protectors onto your map. Safeguards for those dreams, you could say.
Okay, now we're getting mystical protectors. Tell me more.
One of the key ones she suggests, a central spiritual symbol, whatever represents connection for you, Could be an image of Jesus, a sacred geometry symbol, whatever resonates.
Grounding those desires in something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And here's one that might surprise you. She's all about including images of money on your map, real or symbolic.
Okay, I was going to ask about that. Because money, obviously, a huge part of prosperity.
Right. But there's a catch. It's not just about attracting wealth. It's about attracting it without debt.
Ah, okay. Financial freedom, not just a temporary windfall.
You got it. And lastly, she recommends adding what she calls the divine equivalent phrase, simple but powerful. This or something better, thank you, God.
This or something better. There's a real surrender in those words.
Right. It's acknowledging that we might not always know what's best, Like, universe, I trust your guidance. Bring on the good stuff, even if it looks different than I pictured.
Totally takes the pressure off. So we've gone deep on Giudici's prosperity teachings. What's the one thing you hope our listeners walk away with today?
They're not just along for the ride, We have this incredible power to shape our reality with our imagination, our beliefs, our actions. It's about stepping into that power.
Love it. And for those ready to dive in, what's one tangible thing they can do today?
If this treasure mapping speaks to you, grab some magazines, art supplies, whatever you've got. Give those desires a visual form. It doesn't have to be perfect, just authentically you.
That's a great place to start. And remember, be kind to yourself on this journey. Embrace the process. The universe has got your back.
Beautifully said. Now, let's leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder. If you could truly imagine your way out of any problem and into a life of success, what would your treasure map look like?
What a powerful question. This has been The Deep Dive. We'll be back next time with another fascinating exploration. Until then, happy manifesting.